New video is out. The NTSB holds an early press conference. The identities of the victims is out. And a renowned helicopter test pilot breaks down the videos and what happened on this episode of Taking Off. Hi, I'm Dan Milliken. For this update, we're going to go over what's new in the investigation of the horrible crash of the New York helicopter's Bell 206 Long Ranger that took 6 lives on April 10th. We're also going to talk with a leading helicopter pilot to get his take on what happened. But first, let's talk about the people involved. It's absolutely heartbreaking to learn that the 5 passengers were a family from Spain, including 3 children, and how excited they were for a helicopter ride of the New York skyline. And in a moment's time, a family was gone. And I can't imagine the pain their extended family is feeling over the loss. And the pilot. Here was a man who answered the call to serve our country, and he had taken the passion for aviation after exiting the Navy and forged a career flying helicopters. Friends say Sean Johnson was laid back, he was cool, and had a great taste in music. A true friend to those who knew him and had become a skilled aviator. And to the ones left behind of these 6, my deepest condolences. We're going to talk to an expert coming up. But by all indications, it doesn't look like there was anything Sean could have done to prevent this. The investigation will, of course, determine that. But let's go over what we know about this. First, since we're talking about the pilot, Sean had a commercial rotor license with the current medical and had, at the end of March, 788 hours of total time. It's unclear right now how much of that was in the 206, but that's something NTSB is investigating. The helicopter was a Bell 206 Long Ranger built in 2004. This is the actual helicopter shown in a training video. It was owned by Meridian out of Louisiana and flown by New York Helicopters, a Part 135 operator. And for non-pilots, what this means is the set of rules that apply to different aviation operations. And this means different rules for certification of pilots, aircraft maintenance requirements, and operational rules. For us in general aviation, we fly under the set of rules known as Part 91. Requirements are less restrictive. And then for chartered operations, that's flown under rules called Part 135, and regulations are tighter. Tourism flights, while they are chartered, can be exempt from operating under the Part 135 rules, and by the FAA can be flown under the Part 91 rules. Airliners are flown under Part 121 with the most restrictions. Jennifer Homendy, the chair of the NTSB, held a press conference on April 11th and brought up the issue of chartered tourism flight operating under Part 91.
So this particular operator was governed under Part 135 Federal Aviation Regulations, but this particular operation was under Part 91. All air tours are. We have issued an entire report on Part 91 operations with respect to revenue passengers. We believe in one level of safety strongly. And that may not look like regulation for a major commercial airline, but we do believe that they should be regulated. We have issued recommendations in the past on recorders, crash-resistant recorders. We've issued numerous recommendations on safety management systems, on particular regulations for Part 91. It's too early to say what we would recommend as part of this investigation. However, this is a concern that we've raised for a number of years. Certainly we raised this after the Fly Nyan crash, and in a specific report that we have online at ntsb.gov focused on Part 91 revenue passenger operations.
What Homendy is talking about is that revenue-paying passengers should have the same level of operational requirements, higher maintenance standards, equipment standards, which they don't have to have when they're operating under Part 91 rules. The exemption from 135 to let them do 91 is based on smaller operations. This isn't some big charter operation with 20 people or even a 10-person private jet that's multi-million dollars. It's small helicopters doing quick tourism routes. So it can be an undue burden to put the Part 135 rules on smaller operations. Now, she mentions New York Helicopters is a Part 135 operator, so a lot of the standards they're already meeting. But specifically for the aircraft in the example she brought up, tourism operations are not required to have black boxes or cockpit voice recorders. The case she points to was another New York City crash in 2018 that killed 5 people. The pilot survived. The operator was Fly Nyon. And not going into details on that one here, but basically the big issue in this case was the restraints on the helicopter. And had they had the higher standards, the Part 135 standards, more people might have survived. The restraints couldn't be undone, and the 5 passengers drowned. Also, in the press conference, Hamidi mentioned the investigation had just started and that they were looking at everything. And if anyone has pictures or videos, that they could send them in.
The New York Police Department is still diving for components and pieces of the helicopter that we are still looking to recover. Those include the main rotor, the main transmission, the roof structure, and the tail structure, and we appreciate all of their hard work.
Also on April 11th, a different angle video emerged, and here it is, showing the helicopter in a stable flight before the incident happened, right before. And by the way, as soon as news broke on this crash, people flooded social media with all this mass bumping speculation. And having just done all my helicopter training recently in a Robinson, we have to learn all about mass bumping. And I'm not going to dive deep into this, but real quick, some 2-bladed helicopters have the rotors teetering on the mast, semi-rigid and underslung. So the mast comes here, they're underslung. Think of a seesaw, not only just up and down, but if the seesaw were rotating at the same time. The centrifugal force keeps the rotors in place, but if you have low G or negative Gs, the underslung rotor hub can hit the main mast with potentially catastrophic results. And it can cause the flapping blades to hit the tail or boom toward the end near the tail rotor, possibly damaging or slicing the boom at that point, and usually severely damaging the rotor blade as well. But you need pretty extreme cyclic inputs to induce a mass bumping situation. And I say all this because when our helicopter pilot expert breaks this down, you'll hear this term, and I want to make sure we're all on the same page. And to understand better what is happening in the video, I reached out to helicopter test pilot Scott Urschel to get his take.
The video that I have shows the aircraft come into the frame from left to right, straight and level, and looking at just the basic radar data that's been available on the internet, the aircraft appears to be in straight and level flight, which isn't conducive to mass bumping. As it passes into the frame, what I notice is a very severe right yaw. And actually the tail boom goes out of the picture, whether that's actually the tail boom departing or whether the whole helicopter is just yawing and pointing directly at the camera. I can't really tell. Then you will see the fuselage start to descend and a large piece depart the aircraft, which appears to be the tail boom. And looking at the length of it, it appears to be the vast majority of the tail boom. Then as the aircraft descends, you will see the gearbox and main rotor system depart the aircraft. And from several other videos I've seen, it appears that the rotor system is fully intact, meaning both rotor blades are there, and there's a large section of some piece of the aircraft below the rotor system, below the mast. Whether that's part of the gearbox, all of the gearbox, part of the mast, is really going to be hard to tell. I would only assume that investigators will be able to look at the wreckage and determine pretty quickly whether this gearbox departed the aircraft due to torque loads.
As I mentioned, having done my recent helicopter training in the Robinsons, I knew of several incidents, but I also asked Scott if he was aware of anything like this happening with the larger helicopters.
During the Bell 505 development project, I did flight tests for Bell, and we actually looked up in 2017 how many fatal low-G mass bumping accidents that Bell had had in the 206 rotor system, and back then there were none. Zero.
Okay.
There has been an accident in, I believe, Australia, where there was a bird strike, and the pilot reacted to this flock of birds or bird coming into the cockpit and pushed low G, and there was an actual incident that has been documented where there has been mass bumping. But if you read that report, you will see that the blade contacted the tail boom behind the horizontal stabilizer, not at the fuselage, and a part of the blade departed the aircraft. So, you know, investigators will be able to determine if, as soon as they recover this wreckage, I think they will be able to quantify an early probable cause and be able to determine if it was mechanical or induced mechanical type failure. I still think it's highly unlikely that it was a low G mass bumping accident. I've been flying the 206 for 30 years. I instruct in all models of these. In fact, I was just out recently in an L4 doing instruction, auto rotations, hydraulic failures. It is a fantastic airframe. This is just highly unusual, and as we've spoke before, you know, it's concerning for sure.
One thing brought up in the press conference was bird sightings, which Hamidi said they're looking into like everything else. And here's what Scott had to say about that.
It could have been a flock of birds. The birds could have come through the chin bubble. They could have depressed full left pedal. I mean, or right pedal. That's a possibility. You know, you can't rule out any of that until you have all the evidence. But it is very concerning. I mean, all of my peers and numerous other test pilots that I've done flight testing with, we've all had conversations about this, and you know, everybody is waiting to get some answers.
Also, news reports coming out yesterday point to the pilot before the crash radioing the company to advise them of needing fuel. But honestly, that's the mainstream media just grasping at anything they find.
You know, there are several things that could happen. You could have a transmission failure, you could have an engine failure, or you could have a overrunning clutch. You're familiar with the overrunning clutch. If the overrunning clutch were to seize up, you know, that would be a bad day. You don't hear of it happening very much, but you know, it's very common. I mean, when we're flying external load operations, we're always flying at our min fuel. That's just normal. When you're doing tours, you know, you have a minimum fuel. Yeah, I need to get refueled. Highly unlikely that he's flying around up there in a critical fuel condition. I mean, radioing for fuel is not uncommon, and we do it every time we fly into an airport. We call the FBO and say, hey, we need to get topped off. We need fuel. I mean, that to me is just complete speculation.
In another 2 weeks or so, we anticipate the NTSB will release a preliminary report, and we'll be reporting on that. Thanks again to our guest, Scott Urschel, and thanks for watching. Please consider supporting our sponsors like Clemens Insurance. Whatever insurance you need, check out clemensinsurance.net. They're all down here in the links below. And if you want to watch our recent report, you can check it out right here. I really appreciate you guys watching. We'll see you next time. Remember, superior judgment trumps superior skills. Take care.